Welcome to the Made to Flourish podcast. Meg and I are really excited to share our hearts behind who we are and what we want to accomplish here through the Made to Flourish podcast, and really just give you an idea of what you can expect in the weeks and months to come. So we hope that you will gain greater understanding and clarity on who we are, what we're doing here, and how we hope to help you and equip you, and what Made to Flourish is really all about. Hi, welcome to the Made to Flourish podcast.
Yes, I know. I can't believe that today is the day. We've
Today's
talked
the
about this
day.
for so long. This has been like a long dream.
It has been, and it's been a process of this dream coming together to be what it is right now.
Yes.
But about a month ago, we kind of just looked at each other and thought, should we do this together?
It was literally a month ago, like yesterday.
To the dot.
Yeah.
So my name is Yasmina Prosser, and I am a 36-year-old. I'm stressed. I'm very stressed about being 36. I gotta be honest, just over that 35.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something to process, but it's fine. I'm okay.
You look great.
Thank you.
You're
just
not aging.
It's the number for me right now.
Yeah.
I think it's the number. 36-year-old mama of 3 with 1 on the way, which also is blowing my mind. Also being 36 and 1 on the way, that's just also something I'm processing. And I've been married for 11 years to my husband, Akeem. We have 2 daughters, a son, and a little girl on the way. And this is not what I thought my life would look like.
Yeah, same.
There's lots of moments of just being like, wow, okay, this is like not how I thought things would go. And it's good. It's just so different, right?
Yeah,
I think when we're in our early 20s, we just envision life in our future. And it's interesting when you're actually living it out and it's just looking a little different than what you thought it was.
Oh my
but
gosh,
yeah, I know you can relate to that.
No one could have
hard.
warned me
Yeah.
for what my life would be like.
And it's probably good. Like
Yes.
this whole thing that's been happening to me of like just pregnancy after pregnancy.
Yeah.
What people wouldn't know is that I've been pregnant literally 3 times back to back in the last 3
Oh, yeah,
years.
yeah.
I've had a 2022 baby, a 2023 baby, and now I'm about to have a 2024 baby.
That is so crazy.
No one could have prepared me for that.
Especially after what was the age gap between your first and your second?
Right. My first being a 6-year-old. So there was about almost just shy of a 4-year gap between those two. And so it's just been
And
growing.
in that gap was when he made her whole, was birthed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so He Made Her Whole was, some of you will know me from He Made Her Whole. He Made Her Whole was like my little baby that was birthed in 2020 after a couple of years of just really leaning into healing, leaning into wholeness, leaning into intimacy with the Lord, and motherhood bringing about another level of that. You know, when you become a mom, it really does expose more things, but it's grounds for more healing. And that was such a sweet season for me to lean into more healing, more wholeness, and experiencing tremendous breakthrough to the point where I was like, you know, I have something to give and I want to help others experience this freedom and wholeness. That was about the time we met.
Right.
We met earlier in that year. So you kind of got to see me in my like rest phase.
Yes.
And then you got to see me in the grind
In
phase.
your launch phase. Yeah.
And in my launch phase of He Made Her Whole, which was super sweet. And I went real hard, real fast, a little over a year. And it was the sweetest year. He Made Her Whole, that like whole year of just basically doing like life coaching, and really was discipleship coaching. It was really just discipleship and helping women really just reconnect and heal their connection with like God, themselves, and people. That was one of the sweetest, like best years of my life.
It was really cool to watch, like on my end.
Thank you.
Because I know that even though there is like an exhaustion, that I think that some people who don't have that like pastoral exhorted gifting, like they don't exactly know, like when you're working in your giftings, it is so purposeful, but it still is exhausting.
100%.
Like we have our own limits. So
Absolutely.
I watched you like launch and I was like, whoa, this girl has some like gasoline in her tank. Like this girl is going for it. But then when it was time for you to stop, like it was time for you to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has been my pattern. So, because even before He Made Her Whole, I had the She Last project. And that was a little bit before you and I had met. And others would know that about me too, who might have been following along for a while. But I started the She Last project. And when I launched. And when the Lord said pause, it was pause. And I paused for 2 years before I basically rebranded the She Last project to He Made Her Whole.
Right.
But with He Made Her Whole, you know, I did experience some burnout there at the end. I got pregnant with my second. And it was a hard pregnancy. It was that extra estrogen baby. And it was just pulling me down. And life was hard. Akeem and I were navigating things in our marriage and in our walks with the Lord, and it was just hard and heavy. And I couldn't keep up with the demand that I had created with He Made Her Whole of the way I was showing up and the way that I was supporting people.
You learned a lot about things that you liked and things that you didn't
It's true.
like. Like I remember, because I've always loved like content creating. Like that just like is something that like I genuinely enjoy doing. And I remember you got to a point where you were like, I don't like working on social media.
Yeah, totally.
I don't like this. This is the worst part of my job. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, yes.
And so, you know, you really loved the discipling portion and like the inner healing portion.
Absolutely.
And the like relationship connection. But like the background work, I feel like you were like, I don't want to be a part of that anymore.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, so in 2021, I was just like, pause. I'm about to have another baby. I'm burnt out, honestly. And it was, like you said, just like this learning lesson of like the areas that I was my zones of geniuses and not, and the areas I was thriving in and wasn't. And so for the last 3 years, I've really been processing what my experience was like doing He Made Her Whole the way that I was doing it, trying to be this like influencer, basically, you know, on Instagram, showing up a certain way, posturing myself a certain way on Instagram platform, as well as really sitting with people one-to-one and like really sitting through like heart stuff, deep stuff, and watching people lean into like the heart and the holy. And I've been processing over the last 2 years. And one of the things we've talked about over the last year I've shared with you is like, if there was ever a way that I saw myself authentically coming back into the social media space to some level, it was going to be through podcasting. Because if there is any way that I do feel like there's a natural orientation for my gifting, it is through talking. It is through exhorting, encouraging, teaching, connecting. And so I knew for me, like when I have the capacity, and it's like I laughed every year because I was like, I kept getting pregnant. Like I would be like, yeah, this year I'll like get back into it. And then I like fall pregnant again. And it's kind of become a little laughable. But something else that's funny about my personality is that you and I can relate, is that we're very experiential people. And I'm someone who craves tremendous connection. And so when I get to do something with somebody, it's 100 times better.
Oh, yeah.
And my commitment level can thrive in that environment, because when I start to feel bored, there's that person who's like, no, we can keep doing this. I'm like, you're right. I can't keep doing this.
That literally is what made the difference for me. Because I wanted to podcast for 4 years, but like until you were like, we should do it together, I was like, yep. Yeah. And we did it.
Literally.
Yeah.
I know. And a week later, I was like, so how serious are you about this? Because I've already found us a studio. And I already made a logo. I don't know what else.
I'm like, I have not even told my husband yet. Hold on a second.
And so, so I'm excited to re-enter this scene, not just like from a social media standpoint, but honestly for myself.
Right.
That's been a big thing you and I have been talking about over the last couple of months as I've been like processing like this new pregnancy and seeing memories from 3 years ago and being like, man, I was in such a different place then. And like, I miss so many elements of who I was during that time, because I've always been someone who has felt a call to be a voice in people's life. I've missed that tremendously. And I'm really excited to be here with you to be able to like work that out again within my life and have something to do.
It's so true. I feel like when God gives us gifts and we get to like participate with them, there's like just life. I just feel like so full of life, and I feel like you agree with that. And like there are times where we just have to table the giftings and the call, like not the callings, but like we have to table like, okay, now's not the time to be operating in all these things. It's not a bad thing. It's like wisdom. But then when you get to step back into it, you're like, whoa, I feel so alive right now. Yeah. And that's part of like the sharing piece for us. Like if we are learning, we are sharing. If we are experiencing 100%. God, we are sharing. Not everyone's built like that, but like when I share, I feel myself come alive. Yes. Or when I build, and same for you.
The moment I met Christ, I was that way.
Yeah. Same. We're both like have evangelists.
Yeah. I'm like, you got to hear what I just went through with the Lord, you know? And so, so I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to reignite this gift with you. And what's so special with you, for those who don't know yet, Meg and I have been best friends since 2020, I think is like when we started. That was our year. We loved 2020. It was a sweet year for us because we really, I think like our world got to get really small, just obviously naturally with what was going on. And we got to really find deep friendship in one
Yeah,
another.
we had so much quality and quantity time with each other over that year.
Yeah. And our conversations are honestly really special. I feel like when we go on a walk like every week and we talk, and like when we get to talk about things, I feel like it's really full. It's really deep.
It is. And we have such different perspectives that I feel like we bring to the table, even though we're in agreement on like a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's so many times where I'm like, oh, I really didn't think of it that way.
Yeah,
or you were
same.
like, whoa, like I didn't consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You found the words for me.
Yes.
I always love that.
Yes.
Well, I would love to hear about you, Meg.
Yeah.
Tell the people who you are. Most of the people who are going to be here are going to be lovers and followers of Flourishing Motherhood.
Yes. Yeah. I'm really excited. I've been content creating now, honestly, since 2018. I really gained traction, I would say 2022. So the last 18 months have been very like full as far as content creating goes. But I'm excited for people who have been following Flourishing Motherhood just to get to know more of the background behind the scenes, to know more about my heart and just like my day-to-day life. Because I feel like I share a lot of like little chunks of my life on social media, but it's going to be cool for people to just like really hear my story. And also the people that we're going to be interviewing, I'm like really excited about, because like we were talking about with wanting to share, wanting to exhort, wanting to encourage, like my vision for Made to Flourish podcast is people are going to come here and they're going to feel equipped, inspired. Like I want people to like feel like they're really like leaving with like actionable knowledge on whether that's heart related stuff, whether that's like just practical motherhood advice, practical wellness advice. Like I just like love the equipping of the saints. Like I just can't wait to like see people start like flourishing in their own life.
Yes.
That's like what I'm really excited about.
I'm really excited for you with this, because it's so crazy how much people like love and adore and honestly trust you so much through just what you share on social media. But you share such a little piece of who you are, and like so many facets about you that are like the most amazing parts about you. People don't even see it. So I'm like, you're going to be blown when they sit here and hear your heart and hear your thinking on things and hear your perspective. Like, I'm really excited to see that for you. But also, I think as I've watched your journey, because I've been following you since 2018 or 19 as well. And
18.
like, I remember in 2018/19, like screenshotting, like you would be posting different products and different things that you were using for your kids at the time. And I would screenshot literally like everything.
Aww.
And you've always had this Flourishing Motherhood banner, over what you were doing. But I feel like this space is really going to help you help your followers and your community flourish in the way that you have always had a heart to do.
Right. I feel like I haven't quite learned how to share the heart and the personality and the perspectives, because social media is just like fast clips. It's like, it's all these like reels. You can only have a reel that's like 90 seconds long, you know, like your stories are only 60 seconds long. These used to be 15 seconds, So it's like with the social media world, you just get like, it's like a drive-by shooting of just like information. You just get like, pelted with all this stuff. And so I've never really known exactly how to go deep. And I feel like this podcast is just going to be such a great tool and avenue to share the heart and to share the like conversations and like the depth. I'm excited about the depth that this is going to bring. So like, if you're not like, if you don't know about Flourishing Motherhood, if you're not like one of my amazing followers, I am 33. I get that number wrong. I'm about to be 34.
That's true. You are about to be 34.
In just like 2 weeks. And I have 4 children. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-month-old. And it has been so sweet since I've had my 4th. Like, I can't believe how good this postpartum has been.
I love it.
My background is, my degree is in health science. So my certain niche of that degree is called community health. And in community health, my degree was preventative medicine.
Nice.
So that was like a really big, that's still a growing field, but like, let's see, how long ago was it? 14 years ago when I started college. Wow. I really they were like really like hitting the ground with like preventative medicine. So I fell in love with that side of things. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I started off pre-med, and there was still a big piece of me that thought that I would end up in med school. But the reason why I chose community health was that like I loved health related sciences. I just thought that like science is like a really broad field, but I just like loved the human body so much. And so I got that degree actually went overseas to do mission work, and because I wanted to be a medical missionary. It's funny the way that like God designed us, because health to me was always community oriented. Like I just like wanted to be with people and help them. And it's funny that like flourishing motherhood, I would have never known that that is what I would be doing with the background that I have in health. Would be social media stuff. I thought I was going to be in Afghanistan, like helping women deliver babies.
Wow.
You know, and like I literally like studied Arabic, lived in the Middle East, like got training as a medical missionary. But, you know, everything changed when I met Cam. Like he was in the military, and that is the reason why I didn't date him for so long, was because I was just like, I can't be tied down to the States. And I just don't want to be tied down in general. Like marriage wasn't really in my mind. Motherhood was not in my mind at all. Like my mind was like, I'm going to be a doctor or a midwife or a reconstructive surgeon. I'm going to be living overseas, and I'm going to be like, you know, that's just where I was. So yeah, when Cam and I got married, that was 10 years ago. We got married 10 years ago, and we moved over here to, you know, Hampton Roads. I got pregnant very unexpectedly after a cancer scare. So I don't know if a lot of my audience knows that, but that was a huge pivot in my life.
Yeah.
I knew that there was something wrong with me. I don't know how else how to describe it. There was like a gut feeling, literally and physically, because of just certain things that were happening in my body. I was like, I really feel like I need to see an OB. And every time I saw an OB, all they would ever do is prescribe me birth control. No one ever did like a real exam on me. So when I had the real exam done after I moved up here, they found like a baseball size growth on my right ovary. And it could have been cancerous because there was like tunnels growing through, they call it sepsis, like not septic, like rotten, like sepsis, like there was like tunnels running through this tumor of mine. And so they wanted to do like a stat bio on me. Like they wanted to open me up, pull out like my fallopian tube, my ovary, and this mass, and they wanted to run tests on it to see if it was cancerous.
Wow.
And we found this out like 3 weeks after we got married.
Oh my gosh.
So even though I can look back at that time in my life and say I genuinely wasn't scared, probably one of the things was I was very disconnected. But I can look back at that point and be like, that was a huge wake-up call for me to just be like, I would just want to learn more about how I can prevent things like this from happening in my body. And then going right into pregnancy, my first pregnancy with Flora, it being a huge surprise. I shouldn't have even been able to get pregnant. Like it was just such a shock for us. That just like further launched me to like, I really need to get some answers. Like, how am I going to raise my baby? They want me to inject her with all these things. They want me to give birth in this sterile environment. They want me to like all these things that like I should be doing just didn't feel right. They weren't settling. And from what I saw in the world from like my health background, I was like, something's got to give.
Yeah.
And so that was like, you know, Flora, her name, Florence, means flourishing. Like that's where like flourishing motherhood was birthed.
Love that.
Was like after I gave birth to Flora, being like, okay, everything's going to change now. And I want to be able to share what I'm learning with others.
Yeah. Isn't it wild what our firstborns birth in us?
Oh my gosh.
Or birth through us, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, they birth something new. That's for sure.
I just can't believe that like I so desperately did not want to be a mom because of just like all this like fear and trauma in my life. And then I become a mom, and I feel so grateful that I was rescued from my own plans. Like the Lord rescued me with Flora. And I look back on like what I thought joy looked like, what I thought purpose looked like, what I thought my plans were. And I'm like, those were so small and insignificant compared to what God's done in my life.
So good. I think that's something I've been thinking about as well. And in my own words would be like, I've been learning in this season with the Lord that like he knows what we want, but he also knows what we need. And he loves us so much that he'll give us what we need, even if it's not what we want. Because it's actually what we need. And that's actually his kindness. We just have to adjust our expectations. We have to adjust like, you know, our wants and our desires. But when we trust him with our lives, we can appreciate that he gives us what we need because it's going to bless us.
And isn't that just like parenting in general? Like you look at our kids and I'm like, I know what you want, but like, I know if you take a nap right now, the rest of your day will be so much better.
100%.
You don't want this, but you need it.
100%. I wanted to ask you, because I don't know if I've ever heard you just kind of explain this, but like when you started, you kind of gave the backstory of flourishing motherhood, but like when you thought about like, I want to show up in this space and I want to call it flourishing motherhood, what was your heart and your vision for flourishing motherhood? What would you say is like your vision and your mission of flourishing motherhood?
I would say that like the main thing that I want flourishing motherhood to be was like a non-complicated,
Mm-hmm.
like everyone is welcome here, everyone is welcome at the table way to grow in health, spirituality, wellness. Like I wanted it to be a non-complicated version.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my like taglines on my website, flourishingmotherhood.com, is like, let's grow together. Like really, this is a resource for you guys that doesn't feel overly complicated. I wanted everything just to be like simple.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the biggest hindrance for moms who are trying to learn about whether that's their heart or the Lord or like their wellness journey is like there's too much information. There's
Absolutely.
too many details. There's just too much going on. I can't dive in there. And I wanted to create a platform that was like, no, you can, because it's actually not as hard as it seems. And like, let me break it down for you. That was like my like main vision behind it. And I just like love equipping people.
Yeah.
And I love research, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it was really easy. It was just such a natural progression.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have been able to experience that through following you over the years and different facets of our relationship. And I would say for He Made Her Whole, I'm just thinking too of like, I want to explain like why we decided to marry this too,
Yes.
you know, like marry what you were doing through Flourishing Motherhood and like He Made Her Whole. And He Made Her Whole's vision and mission was really like helping women reconnect and live in full connection with God, themselves, and people. And that was from a spiritual health standpoint. But my heart has always been like wholeness all around as well. Like, you know, we've
wholehearted living,
full connection, and really being able to walk in the freedom that cultivates in your life, and knowing how to cultivate spiritual freedom in your life. And so I think for us, when we were looking at each other, like, you want to do a podcast, I want to get back into podcasting, there was this really like beautiful simplicity almost in us just kind of seeing like this could actually work together.
Yeah.
Because though you kind of probably speak to the health and wellness arena more from your platform, you are deeply rooted in Jesus.
Yeah.
And so much of the way you think and function is rooted in Christ. And so much of our relationship is rooted in that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
our friendship is rooted in that. And you've been on that journey with me. Like as I've walked through He Made Her Whole, and as we navigate friendship and community and marriage and motherhood, like we are talking all things wholeness.
Oh yeah.
In every arena.
Right. They're inseparable. Like to
Totally.
me, it's like they're inextricably bound. Your body, your mind, and your spirit are inextricably connected.
Absolutely.
And so even though some people haven't been raised, they don't have that vernacular or that insight because it's just like not been a part of their world. I'm excited about like diving into that and like explaining that more.
Yeah.
But to me, like who's always been raised with like Jesus as like the center of my home, even though it wasn't done well when I was growing up, I just like everything is with him. Like we're just together, you know? So sometimes I realize I'm like, oh, I don't mention that side of things maybe as much on my social media platform, but like you'll hear me mention it and it's like very unintentional. Both are unintentional. It's like I just like he's just a part of my world. He's like my skin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I just don't separate any of that. And so I'm really glad that you get to be in all these conversations because I feel like we both have such deep wells with the Lord, but you have such a different experience of prayer and church and the Bible because you weren't raised as a believer.
Yeah.
And I was. So for me, it's like, it doesn't feel like a second language. It feels like my first language. But for you, like you have such intentional ways of going about your thoughts and your walk with the Lord because they were something that you learned on later on in your life. And there's something really cool about that perspective because I married a man who wasn't raised as a believer either.
Right.
Sometimes he says things and I'm like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. I just have always just assumed.
Yeah, like I met the Lord when I was like 19 or something, but it's still, and I'm 36 now, so I don't know what the math is on that. But it still feels so fresh in so many ways. Like it still feels so new. It's very much on the forefront of everything I do and think, you know, it's different in that sense. Maybe I would assume for someone who was like brought up in it versus kind of coming into it. I was thinking about this too, of just how to just explain, like, we just really felt like Made to Flourish is going to cover all of that, basically. Like when we came up with this title for this podcast, Made to Flourish, we really felt like this was going to perfectly describe your world and my world and this world that we're cultivating together. Exactly. And so I think flourish is another really beautiful way of saying wholeness. And so I'm really excited to just see like how your perspective on things, my perspective on things, the way that we approach subjects and have approached real life situations can just speak to people in many different places.
Yes. And something that I've realized recently is that like, I think the world is catching on that like your body and your soul are inextricably connected.
Totally.
And so like so much, even in the health world, they're like the way that you think about your food matters. Like your gratitude matters. Like I found out the other day that one of the biggest causes of mortality of unexpected death is loneliness.
Wow.
It's like more than even like your cholesterol.
Wow.
Like it's so important.
I believe that.
And so with that, when you look at our podcast, like Made to Flourish, like I would say the three main pillars are like motherhood, spirituality, and wellness. And I just feel like there's not a woman that I know or a mother that I know that's like, I just want to learn about the health stuff. I really could care less about my heart. Like, I don't know anyone. Like, I also don't know any moms who would say, I just care about my heart. Like, my body can be burned. I don't really care.
Right.
Like, they're just like, they're so connected that I'm like, I couldn't pick one without the other.
Yeah. This is reminding me because we're kind of talking like the spirit of a woman, right? Like spirituality, I think, can be deemed as so many things in our time. So like we're talking Christ-centered spirituality. But I remember a season for me where I was doing like tremendous counseling, like so much. I was doing neurofeedback, which is like very like healing of your mind at like a brain level. Sorry, not your mind, more like your brain. It heals your brain. And then I was doing like some trauma therapy and I was doing cognitive therapy. I was doing all of this therapy. And I remember doing this for a few months and like laying on the beach one day and being like, my spirit is still not right. Something's missing. And that's what honestly really propelled me into inner healing and deliverance, was because I was doing all of these physical, you know, and cognitive, all of this work. And yes, there was some changing happening, but I just felt like, I remember just feeling like my spirit is broken. My spirit is wounded. My spirit feels trapped. And when I read the gospel and I read, you know, what Jesus said he made available to us, I was like, there's something that's not clicking in my spirit,
like
that I actually have access
mind. What does
to.
that actually mean?
Right. And
like,
when you say I've been set free,
right,
why do I feel so heavy, so wounded, so not free?
Yeah.
And that was what really propelled me into discovery of inner healing and deliverance, and really just walking my authority and cultivating spiritual freedom in my life. And I've really learned that from experiential process. You know, I have some education in biblical studies and I have done different certifications and I've done different classes, but really like the Holy Spirit has been my teacher over the last 14 years. School's always been like a pain point for me. And, you know, honestly, just it's boring.
Yeah.
Just straight up boring for me.
I love the Enneagram 7 side of you. We should do a whole podcast on
boring.
Enneagram one day. Yeah.
But I think the things I'm passionate about, I will learn to the nth degree through experiencing it and some research. But I have to really be passionate about it to do that. But this realm, inner healing, deliverance, but specifically just like spiritual freedom, is probably the thing I'm most passionate about in my faith, and really just like people experiencing the heart of the Father.
Yes. And it comes so naturally for you.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that like there's people who know about it and talk about it, and there's people who just live it day to day. Like you live it.
It's just like the way my brain thinks.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really special moment for me when I probably went through 5 years of inner healing myself before I really started helping others. But I had learned so much from being walked through that, through different people, that when I got to start helping other people walk through it, it was kind of this cool moment with the Lord of like, oh, this is why you made me the way you made me. Oh, this is why my brain works this way. When I hear someone say something, I just like, I'm going into like this jigsaw puzzle of their heart and their mind. And I'm like, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Oh, you're so good at questions.
And they just come naturally for me because I'm curious.
Right.
Well, why would you say that? Well, why would you say you feel that? Why do you feel that way? You know, and so it's been really special for me to see like, oh, God created me that way to help in this very specific area. And so, yeah, I'm excited to just even share more of that here at
Also, I like if you're new to inner healing, if you're new to like these terms, if you're new to wholehearted living, this is like a good place for you because like I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert inner healer. I'm not expert. Like I was like kind of born into a low-key cult. So like
that's true.
And if you're fundamental Baptist, I'm really sorry. Like don't take offense to that. But like I know there are probably healthier churches than the one I was born into. But like I was raised in a very religious home with very little relationship. And so this is kind of like a new world to me. Like I just was introduced to inner healing, like really through you.
Really?
I feel like, yeah, I mean that I feel like I was introduced to it through you. Okay. I had started my journey of connecting my head to my heart. So I was on the journey prior.
Yes, because that's what attracted me to you. Yes. I was like, oh, you're safe. We can do this. Yes.
So I was I had already been in counseling. So I know that like I was already getting like cognitive work. And there was like two major people who really influenced me. John Eldridge I think his podcast is called, it used to be called Ransomed Heart, but now it's called, what's that book he has?
Is it Wild at Heart?
Wild at Heart. Yeah. His podcast is now called Wild at Heart. He's amazing. I mean, if your husbands need a thing to listen to, they're not probably, your husbands aren't going to be welcome here probably.
Yeah. I don't know if they want to go to Made to Flourish.
Yes. But say it again.
Wild at Heart.
Yeah. Amazing.
And his book and his wife's book, Captivating. Yes. So good. That was the book that I read the salvation prayer through.
Wow.
That's how I
Both
like
such
really
a deep
accepted
part of
the
our
Lord.
stories. They have deep wells with the Lord. Yeah, and then Krista Black Gifford, she's the one who wrote that song, like your love never fails and never gives up. She, I don't think it considers herself a believer anymore, but she wrote this book called Head to Heart. And it was all about, like connecting her heart to the Lord and kind of breaking out of just performance for him. Like, and I remember talking to you about this and you really like honing in and being like, what you do for the Lord is different than like who you are to the Lord.
Yeah.
And I had to do years and years of relearning that who I was to God wasn't my actions, that he actually loved me because who he made me to be and who I am.
Yes.
And I still wouldn't say that I'm like 100% fluent in that. I have to catch myself. And I'm like currently right now, you'll hear us talk about therapy a lot because I love it. I think it's great if you have a good therapist.
Yeah.
But like Lisa, my current therapist, she was just talking about like, we all have these mirrors of like what we think reflects us. And she's like, where I was talking to her recently about like feeling like I'm disappointing people or feeling like, I'm like hurting people or whatever. And she's like, when what is reflecting you is all actions based, like your reflection is constantly going to be changing.
100%.
When you like what you do reflect who you are.
Yes.
She's like, but like the reflection of who you are is in like the risen son of Jesus.
100%.
And I'm like, I have to tell myself that every day. Like I literally like, before we started this podcast, got like a text message that like made me feel that like shame impact of like, I've done something wrong. I've disappointed someone. And like, as we've been talking, I'm like, okay, I need to like put down that mirror and like pick up the Jesus mirror and remember that like, that's actually who I am. That's my reflection.
Yeah. As your friend, I'm so excited for you to, it's going to make me cry, but I'm so excited for you to just like get that revelation.
Me too. Yeah. I need more of that.
Yeah. Agreed. Because I think even for me being like a previous, I would say like my gods prior to really serving the Lord was people, right? It was like people pleasing, codependency. Like those were like my addictions, like my problems prior to Christ. I was never like a drinker. I was never a partier. I never slept around. I was married, a virgin. But for me, it was like codependency and people pleasing. And the weight of people pleasing was so heavy. That's what was the thing for me where I was like, I don't feel free. And it was the people pleasing that drove me to my knees and to the feet of Jesus to learn how to really accept his identity over me. Because it's a lack of identity issue. Right. It's finding your identity in people and what they say and what they think, what they feel towards you, and which is often rooted off of what we've done, right? But just getting a lot of freedom in that area. Not to say that there aren't moments where like the temptation to carry that weight doesn't come, but it's not, I don't feel a slave to that. And I feel like I see how that affects so many different parts of my life in the way that I get to show up in friendships and in my marriage and different things. And I'm just so excited for you to walk in that freedom because I know it's heavy. It
is, yeah. And I feel like another like thing that I feel like it's great that people coming in here being like, wow, like I'm not there yet. Like, I don't feel like I'm there yet. Like when you talk about like being like completely like, set free from this, and I've experienced that as your friend, like I know that you're not just saying that. Like I experienced that. Like I watch you when you start to stumble or slip in, you are fast in picking it up. You're like,
you.
oh, I caught it. Like, I know what's wrong. I know what I'm doing right now. And I feel like for me, even though I've walked through some inner healing, I'm actually going to do an inner healing session today with Lisa at 3:30.
Yes.
So like, even though I've done some, and I've done some with you, and I've done all these different things, it's just like we're all on different journeys, right?
Absolutely.
I want my story to look like yours. I wish that I had like more of this like crescendo, like epiphonic, like there's a before and after point. But for me, it's been like a slower process. And I think that's part of that's like our temperament, the way that like our experience, our testimony, all these different things that come in. But I think that's like a really good thing for our audience to hear and know, is that like everyone's story is so different.
Totally.
And for me, I have not had the same experience as you with walking in freedom in these different ways, but there's no reason to feel shame about that. Like, we're just different. Like, God has given us all different stories.
Absolutely.
And I just feel like I want our audience to really know like where you're at in your journey matters. Yeah. Like, God's writing a story with your life, like that your chapter matters. Like, we're all running our own race. Yeah. And that like they get to be a part of it with us. Yeah. You know?
I can't wait for your listeners to hear how you make sourdough pizza for your family and I still bust out Costco frozen pizza for my family on a weekly basis.
Costco though, you know Costco has my heart. You know Costco has my
but
heart.
It'd be frozen pizza, you know? And I get it because it comes 4 in a box. But but you know, I think it's so true, and I think I'm excited for people to hear that across the board, right? Whether we're talking about our spiritual journeys, our emotional wellness, or health and friendship, that they're going to hear and see that it's okay to be in different places of your journey. It's okay that it looks different for you than it looks for me, vice versa. And I think what I love about our friendship, and I think it's going to be, I always chuckle sometimes when I think about most people outside of like our community don't know that like I'm one of your besties who is like not like you at all in the sense of like, you be crunchy, I'm scrunchy, you know, I do some of the things, but I don't do all of the things. And I just, it kind of makes me chuckle to like, you know, knowing that like you are someone that people look to for so much advice and direction, and trust your research and trust your suggestions. And I do too.
I think what is really funny is that like most people don't know that most of my friends aren't really even like me.
To your level.
To my level.
To your level.
Like, I have a lot of friends who are like, I probably follow 20% of like what you say.
Yeah, 100%. I was laughing because you did this reel yesterday where it was like all of these amazing foods that you made for your kids. Yeah, and it was like, you know, tallow on this and this beefless jelly on this, and everything was just like, and I was like, wow, my day has looked so different. And but what I have like so appreciated about you in this journey of health and wellness, which I can't wait to talk about that journey. Like, I can't wait for us to have a whole episode on what that's looked like for us. You are so balanced. And I think like we are aware of trends and fads of very unbalanced, especially in the realm that you're in, right? Like, we do want to be eating whole foods. We do want bioavailable foods. Yeah. But there's also space for like it not being your season. And you are someone, and I hope that, I think people would have seen this already by now, but maybe if they don't, maybe if they just, because, you know, they're just getting the couple of seconds that they see of your stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, she like literally cooked everything with like the most, like there was nothing processed in that day, you know? And I'm excited for them to hear your perspective of balance, actually.
Yes, because I just really genuinely believe that like perfectionism is like an enemy of motherhood. Yeah. Like, that is an enemy.
Totally.
But I understand the heart behind perfectionism is like, I want to give my kids the best. I want to be my best version of myself. Yeah. But like when it's aside from your like wholehearted living, right, it just becomes an enemy, because then people can either be like, I can't be perfect, so I'm not doing anything. Right. Or they become really rigid, legalistic, black and white. And it becomes really overwhelming and like heavy and like oppressive. Yeah. And I feel like what I've always wanted my platform to be like is like, I am not a perfectionist. And this is what I compromise on. Like, I'm always trying to show my audience, and my compromises changed based on season. Right. So like a lot of my Costco hauls, for instance, I'll be like, I know you guys normally see me make this from scratch, but I'm postpartum right now. So like that's going to be going down a lot. Yeah. Because I'm prioritizing my mental health right now instead of making my own crackers.
And I just think, more people need to hear that, because I have sat with women who have really tried to do like the full crunchy life and the full clean life, and just the defeat I've heard in them because they're not seeing, because on social media, you're just getting blasted with information. You're getting blasted with resources, and it is helpful. It is good to know, oh, that contains this, and but I think for me, where it was internally, I was like, when there was like a fad going on about razors and like the little piece about razors, I was like, okay, everyone needs to calm down.
Yeah. Stop killing everything fun.
Everything. Again, there's got to be some things I can just get at the local store,
Yeah.
But I think like that's been hard for some people. It's kind of almost made them just be like resentful.
Yes. Resentful.
Or tap out.
Yes.
And I think that there needs to be more voices talking about the balance.
Yeah. So like, I always talk about like the pendulum swinging. Like you see just pendulum swinging in everything, whether it comes to like politics or like the education system or whatever. I look at the health and wellness and I see this pendulum swinging where like people became really crunchy a few years ago, right? Around 2020, everyone's like waking up. Everyone's like becoming like the pandemic did a lot in the health and wellness world. And it pulled out a lot of people who have the temperaments who tend to be more black and white and more extreme.
Yeah.
And so you have this like pendulum swing of like people getting really, really healthy and looking into everything. But like I said, if you're not coming at it with a wholehearted living, it becomes burdensome. It becomes weird. You become weary. All these like things happen. And then I saw the pendulum start swinging the last like year in particular, where people are like,
people are tired.
Screw the crunchy community.
Totally.
Y'all are toxic, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like very,
it makes me sad.
It makes me sad too, because you know this about me. Like I'm very balanced and like I'm not like a black and white person.
Right.
And I tend to see things and I'm just steady. And so I'm like, okay, hold on. Every single world, because we live in a fallen world, every single community has a toxic side to it.
Totally.
Is there a toxic side to crunchy moms? 100%.
Yeah.
Are there a toxic side to teachers? Yeah. Is there a toxic side to like police officers or I don't know, like politics or churches? Like of course there is, but it doesn't make it toxic.
Right.
So like I love like helping women like find the balance. Like you, for instance, with your postpartum journey.
Yeah.
And you're like, I hate breastfeeding. I'm like, don't breastfeed, dude. Like pump. Like, and you're like, you would never pump. I'm like, yeah, because I don't hate breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Or like even like people who are like, okay, I really want a home birth. I'm just really scared. Like it terrifies me. I'm like, dude, don't home birth.
Then don't do it. Yeah.
Like literally deliver in a hospital. Like your fear, like your mindset, like your body, your children, your husband, like your mental health, like all of those are such important factors to bring in than just the fact that like a home birth might lead to less intervention.
Right.
Like I even had a friend once who was like, I just really want a C-section. I just really want a C-section. And I'm like, not that I'm like, yeah, go for it. There's no, I'm like, do you feel like you know the risks?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah. I'm like, do you feel like you know the limitations that come with C-section?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah. And I'm like, go for it then.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I just don't feel like I approach healthy living with an ounce of shame.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's like no room for shame in there. Like we're all figuring things out.
Totally. Absolutely. I love that about you. So yeah, I'm really excited. What are you most excited about exploring in this podcast and just kind of going deeper into conversational wise for your community?
Yeah. I think I'm really excited about having a place just to share about what I'm learning, because I just like, I'm a learner. I love learning. And so it's going to be really fun to be like, do you want to write about this week? Like, do you want to learn about this week?
Yeah.
And to actually be able to like answer questions for our audience. Like I'm going to be doing polls on my Instagram a lot, being like, what do you guys want to hear more about? Whenever I do that, I get like hundreds and hundreds of responses of like what the people want to hear about. And I can pick 3 on my Instagram. But like for podcasting, like I could start pulling some of those things together and be like, all right, a lot of people want to know about home birth this week, or about like safe formula options, or about cloth diapers, or like whatever. And like having a place to be able to go through that with.
Yes. So cool. I feel really excited about how women are going to feel seen through hearing 2 different women who have similar giftings in the encouraging realm and the teaching realm to, I think you said in the very beginning, feel equipped, feel encouraged, feel inspired. Yeah. I'm really excited to see how this is going to actually impact people. It's going to be really special.
It is. And I feel like you and I are both actionable people.
Yes.
So like this is going to be a podcast that it's just like white noise.
You hear all the problems and then don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And they just feel confused at the end. Like, okay, so now you told me all these things. What do I do now?
Yeah.
Like we're both like details. Like give me the details.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's going to be really helpful. And I feel like that's one of the things that's going to probably set us apart in the podcasting world, is that I hope that people, like, I hope this is like a true resource for people to be able to be like, what exactly did they say here? Where are the links?
Yes.
What's the
Yes.
name? What's the time? You know what I mean? I just
Yes.
feel like we're going to have the details for
We
people.
want to give you actionables. We want to give you
Yes.
resources. We want to equip you. And I think I love that that is a part of your gifting as well, is that like you love equipping women, because
Yeah.
that is the same for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
you've been really equipped by podcasts. I know
Yeah.
you've like me too. I feel like both of us, like, I feel like I gained a lot
yes.
in my personal life through
Yeah.
podcasts. And that's why I value it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, listening to other people's experiences and stories has always encouraged me. And having a space where we can share ours from the last 10 years of how we've been walking things out with the Lord, marriage, motherhood, health.
Marriage.
I can't wait. I think it's going to be really special. So I would say this is a great place to commence our introduction podcast. We hope that.
Where can they find us? Let's just like give us all the resources.
Yeah. Why don't you go first?
Our Instagram is
The Made to Flourish podcast.
The Made to Flourish podcast.
Yes.
Not to be confused with Made to Flourish or Made to Flourish podcast.
Correct.
There actually are. It's not the most original name.
Right.
But it represents us so
It's
well.
just,
we just
like, this
decided
has
to
to be
take
it.
the risk.
Yeah.
Like,
Add
this is worth the risk. Yes.
End it with podcast.
The Made to Flourish podcast. That's where you guys can find us on Instagram. Her Instagram name is He Made Her Whole.
Correct.
I tagged that in my stories. My name is Flourishing Motherhood, or on TikTok it's Flourishing Mother. But I can't wait to have like little clips and be able to like really share a lot about like what we're doing and when things are coming out and stuff on the channel.
Yeah, and I hope this gives you guys a good idea of who we are, our hearts, what we're excited to dive into, and really what the Made to Flourish podcast is going to be all about, what you can expect. Many, many facets of conversations and topics will be taking place. But I think today we got to really share our heart, and that will be the foundation to everything that we say. And so we're excited to be on this journey with you. We're excited to grow with you. We're excited to flourish with you.
I feel like one thing we can promise our guests is that we will always be honest and authentic. Like, we're never going to be faking anything on here. We're going to be giving, without being too, because you and I could both overshare. We might overshare. I can promise you, you know what? I can promise you we'll overshare. I can promise you that.
Absolutely.
But we're always going to keep it 100 here.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to keep it 100. And we're not always going to agree on things, and we're not always going to 100% agree with the guests that we have on. Like, there's some people who come on that like we don't necessarily agree with or endorse 100% of what they do. Yeah. But we really want variety, and we want to give people voices. Yeah. And you can do with it what you please, but like I said, we're not perfectionists. Totally. So there's going to be a wide scheme of things. There's going to be variety. There's going to be things that we disagree on. There's going to be things that we don't necessarily endorse, but we don't feel like we need to condemn either. And so we're just going to keep it 100, authentic and real on here.
And I would even say, I was thinking about this earlier, if there's anything that we ever say or any guest we ever have or any book or person we ever mention that gives you like a little twist in your spirit, like bring it to the Lord. Like, it's okay. Be curious. Be curious. And also like, ask the Lord what that is. And like, don't let it turn you off from leaning in. I think sometimes that little twist that we can feel sometimes in our spirit, like, oh, I don't like that author, or I don't like that they mentioned that or whatever. Sometimes it can almost like turn people off from just like that place. They almost like fear it, right?
It's like internal cancel culture.
Yeah, totally. Internal cancel. It's like, oh, suddenly you don't feel safe. I just want to encourage you, like, ask the Holy Spirit about that. Ask if we're safe. Ask if it's still, ask those things. Like, don't just be turned off if you hear something that you might not love or might not agree with initially, because we're all learning here together. We're all bringing that, our hearts and like the things that we have to agree with and disagree with, to the Lord too. So
if you're someone who like is like a cancel culture like queen, like this is probably not the podcast for you. Because I just feel like you and I both really appreciate authenticity, but we appreciate like hearing the other side of things. And like I want this to be a place where we can like make room for everyone at the table. Like I want that to be like a core part of the Made to Flourish podcast. And I also feel like you and I aren't trying to write laws.
Absolutely.
So people are
not.
going to hear us change and grow. Like, we're going to have an opinion on something this year.
Right.
And hopefully, God willing, we'll have different, like, things will change, because we're in the process of growing.
Of being sanctified, always growing. Even like there's been recent things where I'm like, oh my gosh, a year ago I was like a believer about this particular thing in the health world, and now I'm like, I was brainwashed. I feel like, and it's we're always growing.
And the same with like things that like I feel like there's been times, like my little sister lives with me, right? So like she said things before where she's like, you literally, like, I've given her like spiritual advice before, and she's like, that was like the opposite of what you told me a few years ago. And I was like, yeah, I was way off. The Lord convicted me on that, and I was way off.
Yeah.
You know, so I just feel like we are growing with you
Yes,
guys. We are
yes.
growing beside you guys.
Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
thank you for being with us.
Yeah.